A very good morning to one and all. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to be less than perfect. It's okay to do what's best. And most importantly, it's okay to be yourself. Mandy Hale once said, "It's not selfish to love ourselves or to make our happiness a priority. It is necessary." On behalf of the Department of Psychology of Carmel College and the Indian Medical Association, it is my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to each one present to this national webinar titled Young People, Mental Health and Self-Care. We all live in a busy world that is constantly changing. We get caught up in everyday lives that we forget about the most important part, that is taking care of ourselves. Our busy schedules often lead to tremendous stress. Each one spends much time doing daily chores, schoolwork, studying for tests, working, that we forget to spend time in caring for ourselves. One of the best things we can do for our mental health is set aside a little bit of time every day to assess how we feel mentally and then address any negative emotions. And this is the focus of today's webinar. Edwin Harvey said, "A day without prayer is a day without blessings, and a life without prayer is a life without power." As the Carmel tradition follows, no event starts without invoking the blessings of the Almighty. I now request my colleague, Ms. Priyanka Rodriguez, to lead us into prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering all of us today. May you bestow your guidance and blessings on this event so that we can enjoy and appreciate its significance in our lives. Bless everyone who is a part of this event, that each of us may be able to share what we learn through this event. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Priyanka. Without further ado, I now request our officiating principal, Dr. Aldina Braganza, to set the tone for this webinar.
A very good morning to everybody's and seated in the audience, to our resource person for today, for all of those viewers on Carmel Live, to Dr. Babita Angle and the Indian Medical Association. A very warm welcome to each one of you to today's workshop organized by the Indian Medical Association in collaboration with the Department of Psychology. I feel delighted to see students on campus. And I know that I hope you all are feeling the same way here who are seated, because it's such a pleasure to have everybody, back to a little bit of normalcy. When Dr. Babita Angle called me up and said that the Indian Medical Association is trying to organize a talk on youth and mental health and coping and living in today's times, I jumped at the idea because I thought this is what is the need of the hour. And the Department of Psychology was very open and said, of course, we should do it. And so that's how this program, today's program, came to light. So at the onset, I would like to thank our resource person, Dr. Abhijit Nadkani. He's the right person because of his vast experience. I won't get into details of his biodata right now. That will happen a little later. But we are honored to have you, Dr. Abhijit, and welcome to our institution. For those of you watching on Carmel Live, I would like to say that Carmel College is special because we like to it's a women's institution, the only women's institution in Goa. And also, we like to ensure that our students get an opportunity for overall development and, they get the skills to live life, just not mere education. Having said all this, I would like now to delve on the topic of today's talk, and that is mental health and youth. And as I was thinking about it today, this morning, I thought I would share these thoughts of mine with y'all. Youth is a very special time. And there are many reasons why it's a special time. But I'm going to share the reasons as an older person, having lived my life as a youth and now as an older person looking back. I can say one thing. Every time I try to search for that one thing that question we ask ourselves, who am I? I go to my young days and try to find out what made me happy then. It's very strange how some of my happiest moments were in that environment when things were so carefree, and I enjoyed doing some of the things that I did then. And it just struck me at that moment what an important phase of life this is. Because this is the time when we are asking this question, who am I? And that journey is a special journey. Over the years, there's one thing that I have found out. And that is, we all have a space within us that contains our who am I answer. And the only way to reach this, to the essence of who you are, is when you look at your feelings, and more importantly, the difficult feelings. Because your journey through life will take you through those places. And no matter what you do, nobody can have a perfect life. We all will come across situations like right now, we are going through the pandemic, and things are not like how they were a couple of years ago. Things are different, and I can assure you, each one of you sitting down here listening to me today would have had your own share of whatever difficulty, challenge you might have gone through. And how you face it, what are the skills that you possess, that will define in a way who you become. So today I'm very happy that we have Dr. Narkani here today, who will share with you all some of his own experiences and throw light on this important aspect. How do you handle your mental well-being? How do you maximize it? And why it is so important not to shy away from your difficult times, because that's where your lesson lies. And this I'm telling you as an adult. This I'm telling you through my own experience. Your challenges will take you to a beautiful place of well-being. Don't be afraid of it. So without much ado, I once again thank the Indian Mental Association for organizing this program, and Dr. Narkani for being part of and so graciously spending time with us. Thank you, one and all, and enjoy. And please don't forget to ask questions, because when you ask questions, you learn. Thank you. And very important, this is something that I don't want to miss out. I thank the Department of Psychology, Dr. Michelle, who is the HOD, Faye, Sybil, Priyanka. Thank you for organizing this and putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Alina, for those words of welcome. Music puts everything you could say into words and melody. To express this form of art and to kickstart this webinar, I invite Miss Rania Gomes, a student of first year BA, to sing her original composition on the theme of loneliness. Over to you, Rania.
Check. Check. I've been thinking to myself, what did I do wrong? Not a soul around to talk to, it's killing me, you know. Nobody to lean on, abandoned just by everyone, dealing with this devil inside of me. I need to break free, free from everything. Everyone deserves a life at happiness. I need to break free, breaking through my loneliness, tearing down these barriers of darkness. Tearing down these barriers of darkness, surrounded by burdens and able to live my life. Every time I'm about to crumble and need someone beside, I can't take this any longer. I need to live my life and enjoy it with someone special and kill this beast inside. I need to break free, free from everything. Everyone deserves a life at happiness. I need to break free, breaking through my loneliness, tearing down these barriers of darkness. Tearing down these barriers of darkness. Ooh. Thank you.
Thank you, Rania, for that wonderful song. Last but not the least, we cannot begin without introducing our resource person for this webinar. I now kindly request Dr. Babita Prabhudesai, the President of the Indian Medical Association, Margao, to introduce our resource person for this webinar, Dr. Abhijit Nadkarni. Ma'am, could you please, excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, please could you start again? Thank you, ma'am. And once again, a warm welcome, sir. As an expression of our gratitude, I now request Ms. Alicia to present Dr. Abhijit with a token of our appreciation. Thank you, Alicia. Ms. Sonali will now present to Rania Gomes a token of our appreciation. Thank you, Sonali. Before we begin, I'd like to mention a few points to be kept in mind. Participants, please note, if any of you have a question, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box, All the questions will be addressed at the end of this session. The feedback link will be shared towards the end of the webinar in the chat box, which will be required to be filled and submitted within an hour. I now request Dr. Abhijit to take over.
If I just press any tab to change, right? Press any tab to move forward. Okay, can you hear me? Wonderful. Good morning to all of you, for all of you, those who have joined here in person and the rest who are joining online. It's always a pleasure to interact with young people in whichever part of the world I'm in, and especially talking to young people about their own mental well-being and well-being in general. So I think today's topic is has always been important. I mean, young people and your well-being has always been important, but it's increasingly become more important because of the pandemic and the challenges that it brings along with it. So I don't want to kind of say that because you probably have heard a lot about this and the importance of your well-being in the challenges that you face in these difficult times. So over the next half an hour or so, what I'm going to do is briefly talk about why it's important to be talking about the mental well-being of young people. Look at what we mean by mental health problems. Try to explore a little bit why young people develop mental health problems. And then finally end with exploring some solutions to the problem, because it's not just enough to talk about the problem, but we need to see how we can reduce the problem, and then so end off with focusing on what the potential solutions could be to avoid developing mental health problems and to enhance your mental well-being. So the first question is, why should we invest in the mental well-being or mental health of young people, besides the fact that a large proportion of the population across the world today is young people? Never before in the history of mankind have we had these many young people living on the globe. That's unprecedented. I mean, this is the first time in the history of humankind that that's happening. But more so in a country like India, where the structure of the demographic is such that a large chunk of our population is young people like yourselves. So, keeping that demographic reason aside, why is it that we should be talking about the mental well being or mental health problems that affect young people? And the first reason is this. This slide basically shows you how or when mental health problems present across different age groups in the population. And if you look at this very carefully, you will see that for most mental health problems, the initiation or the incidence or when it starts happens at this age, which is a particularly productive age group and which is most of you young people, you will see that there's a huge overlap, and most mental health problems, or the most commonest mental health problems, start with in a very small range between 15 to 25 years, which obviously is young people like yourselves. So that's one reason why we should be talking about mental health problems or the mental well-being of young people. This is another representation of the same. This is another slide which basically shows when various non-communicable diseases, as we call them, develop in the population. So I'm not talking just about mental health problems here. I'm talking about a range of non-communicable diseases which can affect brain, which can affect respiratory system, which include cancers, etc. When do they start? Now, if you carefully look at this slide, I mean, even if you are not scientifically minded, if you could carefully look at this slide, what you will see is that orange bit of it in the younger age group. If you reflect on the orange triangle, so to say, that you see there, that's mental health problems. And everything else is the other non communicable diseases. What you will see there is the biggest size of the orange bit of it is happening at a very young age, again 15 to 25 years. So, which basically tells us that most mental health problems will start off at a young age. And then as the age progresses, you will see that that orange bit starts getting smaller and the other bits start becoming bigger. So you'll see that other non-communicable diseases start increasing as your age progresses. But when it comes to mental health, most of mental health problems start at a younger age. And that's another big reason why we should focus on mental health problems. And finally, just to put some kind of names to the kind of mental health problems that develop in young people, you will see in this slide, if you look at the age groups between 10 to 25 years and look at the commonest problems, these are all kinds of health problems. The commonest health problems that develop between 10 to 25 years of age, you will see those categories that I've highlighted in red, a large chunk of them are actually mental health problems. And if you then reflect on the kind of programs that we have for young people, the kind of health programs that we have for young people, the narratives that we have around health of young people, you realize that despite what you see here on this slide, the commonness, so to say, of mental health problems in young people, the narratives are not around mental health. People talk about physical health problems in young people. Programs are around physical health problems in young people. But no one talks about the commonest problem that affects young people like yourselves, which is mental health problems. And so, this is why we need to focus on mental health problems. And what do I mean by mental health problems? How do mental health problems manifest in the larger population, not just mental health in the young people, but in the larger population? How do they manifest? And what do I mean when I say mental health problems? Am I talking about depression? Am I talking about psychosis? Am I talking about anxiety disorders? What am I talking about? And what does it really mean when I talk about these disorders? I just want to simplify it, okay, because over the years we have tended to complicate matters when it comes to mental health problems. We kind of created these constructs which are difficult to understand, which constructs which only experts are supposed to understand. So I'm going to demystify and simplify some of these. It's very important to remember that mental health problems are the other side of the coin of mental wellness. So, mental health problems are not something completely different from mental wellness. They lie on the same spectrum. And what do I mean by they lie on the same spectrum? Let's just reflect a little bit on our emotions. I'm sure all of you will agree that almost all of us have experienced some kind of sadness at some part in our life. At some point in our life, all of us will experience sadness. Can be because of various reasons. The reasons might vary for each person, but all of us will experience sadness. So that's one end of the emotional spectrum, which is normal, if I could use that word, sadness, which is in response to something that's happening in our life. Now, that will come in response to an event. You'll experience it for some time and then it goes away. At the other end of the spectrum is what we call as depression. That's an extreme end or an extreme manifestation of sadness as one of the symptoms that you'll experience. Or let's take a positive emotion. Let's look at happiness. I'm sure all of us experience intense happiness at some point in our life for something that's happened in our life. At the other end of the spectrum, when you convert this into a mental health problem, there's something known as mania, where people experience extreme euphoria or ecstasy without any reason at all, and this then becomes a mental health problem with other symptoms, of course. So, what I'm trying to say here is mental health problems are an extreme manifestation of normal emotions, normal behaviors, normal thoughts that all of us experience. When these emotions, thoughts, and behaviors become extreme, when they become very intense, when they last for a long period of time, and when they interfere with our functioning, that's when it becomes a mental health problem. So, the point to remember is mental health problems are an extreme manifestation of any kind of emotions, behaviors, or thoughts that any one of us can experience. If there is one lesson that you want to take away from today, I would want you to remember this, that when you experience mental health problems, it's not any different from normal emotions, thoughts, or behaviors that you would experience. It's an extreme manifestation of what everyone experiences. So, what is it then that causes mental health problems in young people? So, I'm going to focus here on young people because this talk is about young people, but we also have to remember that some of these reasons for developing mental health problems also apply to people or individuals who are not young people. There's a huge overlap of these reasons why people develop mental health problems. The first and commonest is stress. And this stress can come from several things happening in your lives. So these could be normal changes that happen in our life. So what do I mean by normal changes? As you grow up, there are life events that happen. For example, you need to find a job. Sometimes you have to leave home and start your own household. These are normal changes in our life. These are normal life events that happen in most of our lives. This can be stressful to people, not to everyone, but to some people. Then there can be, so these are expected events. Then there can be unexpected events that happen in our life which can cause stress. And what do I mean by unexpected events? For example, death of a loved one. Right? It's not an expected event. If it happens because of old age, sickness, etc., you kind of prepare for it and you are expecting it. But many times when a death of a loved one happens suddenly, it's an unexpected event. That's stressful. So you have expected or normal events happening in our lives that cause stress. You have unexpected events in our lives that cause stress. And then there are things happening around us in our environment. Stop sharing. Uh, so picking up from where we left before technological problems intruded, which is again an inevitable part of our modern life, I guess. So I was talking about normal changes that happen in our life, then unexpected events that happen in our life, and the third thing is the developments in the world around us. Now, these might not directly affect us as individuals, but they do have an influence in our lives. So, what do I mean by that? So, for example, poverty or violence, which affects us individually or the communities that we live in. So, these are certain things that are happening in our environment which can lead to stress and affect our mental well being. The next important thing, especially affecting young people, is loneliness. Now, I want to be very careful when I talk about loneliness because we usually tend to conflate loneliness with being alone. Now, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone might not be a problem. Some people might choose to be alone, some people might thrive in being alone. But loneliness is problematic. And it has nothing to do with being alone. You could be amongst 50 people and you could still be lonely. And you could be by yourself, alone, but not lonely. Being alone is not the problem. Being lonely is not good for your mental well being. And this is increasingly becoming a problem in the modern world, especially in urbanized settings. With increasing urbanization, we are seeing more and more people around us. We're seeing more crowds around us. There are lots of people in our vicinity. But that does not necessarily mean that we are not lonely. You could be amongst these crowds and still be lonely. And there is evidence to show that there is increasing urbanization has an adverse impact on the well-being or the mental well-being of young people. So that's another reason why people's mental well-being is affected. Urbanization and loneliness. Substance use. Mainly in India, it's alcohol and tobacco. I mean, the commonest used substances, which can work in both ways. They can lead to mental health problems, or they can be used as self medication for mental health problems. Your mental well being is affected, you are stressed, you see using substances as a way out from that. Temporary, it might help. It might be a temporary relief from the stress you're experiencing, but in the longer term, it can increase the problems. Now, you can well turn around to me and say, yes, but it's not really a problem in India, which is not true. The proportion of young people using substances in India, especially tobacco and alcohol, is increasing year on year. You might turn around to me and say, this is not really relevant for us. We are a women's college. Young people, especially women, do not use substances. Maybe your teachers don't know that. But you know as well as I do that young women are increasingly consuming substances in India. In fact, there's research to show that, especially in urban settings, if a young man and a young woman are drinking, many times young woman is drinking equally as much as a young person, a young male within that setting. So that's no longer an issue. And then finally, the age of initiation, the age at which young people start using substances, is coming down drastically in India as in a lot of other developing countries. So, substances, another problem which affects our mental well being. Social media. Now, you might think that this is an old person who doesn't know anything about social media who is dissing social media like all old people do. No, I'm not dissing social media at all. I know that there are benefits of social media. I know that social media helps us to connect with people. It helps us relax. It has its benefits. And I completely agree that we should engage with social media as far as its benefits are concerned. But we also have to remember that there's almost probably nothing in this world which only has benefits. Everything that has benefits when done in extreme also has disadvantages, and so does social media. And this is not something that I believe. This is not coming from my head. I mean, this is not me being an old fogey and saying, you know, social media is not good for young people. There is evidence to show that social media affects our mental well being. So use social media, use it responsibly. Anything done in extreme can affect you, your health, your mental well being, your mental health. So, another thing to be mindful of. And finally, I don't know how many of you have seen this movie. This is a Marathi movie. It's a very interesting Marathi movie. The young person that you see in the poster is someone who develops mental health problems or depression, to be more specific. And he moves or he drifts from his urban house to live in a village in the Konkan close to the sea. And this woman who is also someone who has had depression in the past and who has now recovered gives him shelter, and he starts living in her house. And one day, as she's going to the market with her cook who kind of works in her house, he's perplexed. The cook does not understand what's wrong with this young man, and so they start discussing about what the young man is experiencing. And she tells him, and he says in Marathi, Asat Sukha Sukhat, which basically means just like that. I mean, has he just developed this just like that, despite having all the comforts in life? Because this young man comes from a rich family. He has all the comforts in life. He has all the luxuries that's required. But despite that, he develops depression. And this person from the village does not understand how, if you can have all the things that you need in life, all the comforts that you can have in life, can you develop depression? So that's my final point about what causes mental health problems. Sometimes we might not find a reason. You just develop a mental health problem. And it's not important always to find out what the reason is. If we can find a reason, well and good. If we can change that reason, well and good. But sometimes we might not find a reason. You just develop a mental health problem. So then it becomes a case of finding or trying to help without trying to find the reason. But at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that in most young people, the mental health problems that you experience or the adverse effects on your well-being are not coming from inside you. They are not related to any chemical imbalance in your brain. They are not related to any genetic issues that you might have. They are usually in response to your environment and circumstances. And so the solution lies in changing the environment and the circumstances. If we can change the environment and the circumstances, most young people might not go on to develop mental health problems. So, what is it that we need to do to prevent mental health problems or to promote mental well being? We are very good at responding to any threats to our physical health. So we know that we have to exercise regularly. We know that we have to manage our diet. We know that if we do some of these things, our physical health is more or less taken care of. But we have no clue what we have to do to maintain good mental health. And it's not any different from what you would do to maintain good physical health. All you need to do is replace good physical exercise with good psychological exercise or emotional exercise. What you need to do with the diet for good physical health is to replace it with good emotional diet or psychological diet. But what do I mean by that? Let me give you some concrete examples of things that we could do to maintain good mental health. The first thing is to accept that life is not always going to be smooth sailing for anyone in this world. I mean, however rich you might be, however insulated you might be from the problems of this world, there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. We can't expect all of our life to be only good days. So, understanding that we are going to have to deal with some bad days at some point in our life is very important. So, that prepares us to deal with those bad days. So, that's the first thing. And the second thing is to develop resilience. Now, what do I mean by resilience? Resilience is being able to anticipate these bad days, having the skills to deal with these bad days, having the skills to cope with those bad days, and being able to bounce back despite those bad days. That's what resilience is all about. But this is all theoretical, right? I mean, this me saying to you that you need to be resilient is theoretical. I mean, like, how does it help you in any way? Like, if I were to end this talk now and say, like, yeah, we are done, you go out and you still don't have the skills to be resilient. So that's not very helpful. What are the practical skills? What are the things that you need to be doing to be able to deal with these bad days? So, first thing is about control. What can we control and what can we not control? As human beings, we tend to get stressed up about things that are not in our control. There is no point in getting worked up about things that are not in our control because we can't do anything about it. It just adds to our stress and anxiety. So, if we have a problem in front of us, if we have something that's affecting us, we need to be able to break it down into what are the things that we can control and what are the things that we can't control. And then focus on changing the things that we can control. So, for example, let's say there is a surprise examination that's declared today, and your teachers say, this coming Saturday, you're going to have an exam. And you didn't know, I mean, it's surprise, right? And so, some of you might not be prepared. And so, you can get stressed, you can get anxious, you can get worked up about why the college decided to announce a surprise examination on Saturday. But that's not in your control. What's the point in getting stressed about it? There's no point because you can't change it. You can't change the fact that the examination is happening on a Saturday. What you can change is how prepared you can be for the examination despite the short notice. So you could decide to study for the examination, that's in your control. You could decide to get into a group with some of your other colleagues and have a study group so that you can study together, that's in your control. So, focusing on things that are within your control is very important. And I stress on this because as human beings, most of us tend to focus on uncontrollables, and that's not very helpful. The second thing is about threats to us. And what's the answer to this question? Why do zebras not get ulcers? And this is true, zebras don't get ulcers. Who gets ulcers? Human beings get ulcers. Why do zebras not get ulcers and why do human beings get ulcers? Zebras don't get ulcers because they respond to the threat of a real lion attacking them. Zebras do not respond to a thought of a possible lion attacking them. Human beings don't do that. As human beings, we are wired to worry about things. So we don't just worry about the lion when the lion is in front of us, but we also worry about a lion possibly attacking us even when the lion is not there. So it's important for us to respond to situations when they happen It's important not to stress or worry about situations that might happen because those are in our head. They might never happen. So there's no point in worrying about that. So there's no point in worrying about, oh, there might be a surprise examination on a Saturday. It might never happen, right? It's in our head. I mean, our constant worry that something might happen which we have not planned for. If the examination gets announced, then we respond to it. That's very important to remember. And if the examination does get announced, how do we respond to it? There is emotions focused response and there is problems focused response. Emotions focused response is not very useful. Examination gets announced, you get stressed, you get worried, and you respond based on that worry and that stress. Not very helpful. What we need to do is problem focused responding. And what do I mean by problem focused responding? If there is an examination that's been announced for Saturday, how can I prepare for it? So the problem is exam happening in 3 days. What are the potential solutions? One, all of us can go on a strike. Yeah, potential solution. I mean, you might not do it, you might be good kids, you might not do it, but it's still a potential solution. Two, I can start studying for it. Three, I can get into a study group and start preparing for it. So there might be several different solutions. These are just the ones which I can think of. But this is problem focused thinking now. So I'm thinking of the potential solutions. Then I look at the various solutions and think what are the pros and cons of these solutions. Pros of going on strike, well, it's going to be fun. Cons of going on a strike, well, I might get rusticated from the college. Pros of studying, well, I might pass the examination. Cons of studying, well, I mean, it's no fun studying. So there are going to be pros and cons for every solution that you think. So what you need to be doing is looking at which one has the most pros and the least cons, and then select that solution and work on it. It might work for you, it might not work. You implement the solution, you see how things are going. If it works, wonderful, good on you. If it doesn't work, you go on to the next solution that you add in your list. This is solution focused, right? You're kind of focusing now on the problem, finding solutions to it, rather than responding to the emotions that came because of the problem. Third thing is about reframing the problem. Right? What do I mean by reframing the problem? There's usually multiple perspectives to the same situation. And we as human beings, generally, when we are in a difficult situation, we always tend to see the negative sides of it. So let's take the same example of the examination. We could focus on the fact that it's unfair, that this college should not have done this. Or we could look at the other side of the picture and say, oh, at least this is forcing me now to study. Otherwise, I wouldn't have read my books. And so I would have failed in my final examination. This is forcing me to study, so I will do well in my final examinations. Different perspective, right? Same issue, different perspectives. One causes stress, the other does not. So we need to be able to see the different sides of the same issue, and that helps us reduce the stress that we get from this issue. Parking the problem. You have a problem, you park that in one space in your head and not deal with it at that point in time. Parking a problem does not mean denying the problem or running away from the problem. Parking the problem just means that I'm going to keep it aside for the moment, focus on what I need to be doing at this point in time, and then come back to this problem tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., focus on it, try to solve it. Perfectly legitimate response. You're not denying it, you're not running away from it, you're just saying that right now I need to focus on this other particular thing that I'm doing, so I'm parking the problem there, I'll come back to it tomorrow. And then you need to come back to it tomorrow and resolve it, because parking it does not mean that it's gone away. It just means that you are choosing to respond to it at a different time when you're in a better space. We need to test our negative thinkings, the thoughts, the automatic negative thoughts that come in our head, and challenge them, because many times we just take them at face value. So let me give you an example. So you are walking down the corridors in your college, your teacher is coming from the other direction, you smile and nod to them. They don't look at you, they just walk past you without acknowledging you. What do you assume as a student? You assume as a student that for some reason your teacher is not happy with you or angry with you and you have not done something right. And so you get stressed up. You go home, you stew over it, you get worked up, you are stressed, anxious about how this is going to affect your grades, so to say. Now, this is an automatic negative thought that's come into your head without any major evidence. It's just based on that one encounter. What might be the real reason why the teacher did not acknowledge you is because the teacher is thinking about something else and they did not see you, and that's why they didn't acknowledge you. Now, there are two ways you could deal with this. One is you just accept at face value your interpretation that the teacher is angry with you, or you could challenge your negative thought. And how do you challenge your negative thought? Has this ever happened before? Has the teacher ignored me before? No. One way of challenging the thought. Another way is go and talk to the teacher and say, yeah, I passed you in the corridor yesterday. I acknowledged you. You did not respond. I hope everything is fine. And the teacher might say, oh, I didn't notice you. Sorry, I was in my own, I'm just worried about something else. And I don't know, the neck inspection or whatever, I was worried about it. And so I didn't see you. Sorry about that. Problem solved, right? You've challenged your negative automatic thought and realized that it was wrong. Few other simple things that you need to be doing is taking time out for yourself. Okay, these things seem like common sense, but many of us don't do this. There is evidence to show that if you give time to yourself, self-care, that reduces your chances of developing mental health problems. And how could you do that? You could do that by developing hobbies. You could do various different things within your hobbies, things that interest you, but that's giving time to yourself and your well-being. Other thing to do is being mindful of your circumstances. Right? I mean, I'm sure all of us have done this. I mean, this is pretty dangerous. I mean, don't try this, but I'm sure all of us have done this when we've gone on a tour or a trip or a picnic. What we are doing is constantly clicking photographs of what we are seeing, of us, selfies, etc. Right? All of us are doing this. What we are not doing is focusing on what's around us. We are so focused on clicking the next photograph and putting the right filters to put this up on Insta or whatever social media you're on, that we don't realize that we are not paying attention to what's happening around us. Paying attention to what's happening around us is called mindfulness, being mindful of what's happening in the moment. And that's very, very important for our mental well-being. Photographs come and go. Focusing on what's happening around you is what's going to help your mental well-being. Sleep. Again, something that is highly underrated, especially amongst young people. There are various reasons we don't sleep well. I mean, use of devices, taking our mobile phones into bed, surfing the net at night. There's several reasons. Out partying, there's several reasons why our sleep is affected. What we have to remember is that all of us require at least, on an average, 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And this serves a function. It gives our brain rest. It helps us consolidate the learnings that we have had in the day. They get more concretized in our brain. So there are several functions. If you're not sleeping well, that has a knock-on effect on the rest of your day. It causes anxiety, causes fatigue, makes you irritable, it interferes with your focus in your classes, on what you're reading, etc. So sleep is very, very important for your mental well-being. Some of these things might sound like common sense solutions, and they are common sense solutions. Not just because I'm saying this does not mean that this is rocket science. A lot of this is common sense. The problem is that most of us don't do these common sense things, and so we're very mindful of the fact of these common sense things that we should be doing. Other thing is, if you're experiencing stress, if you are feeling that your mental well-being is affected, find someone you can talk to, someone you can trust. This does not have to be your parents, this does not have to be your teachers, it could be anyone whom you can trust. We know from evidence that sometimes just unburdening yourself to someone you can trust helps your mental well-being. So find someone you can trust and talk to them if you're stressed, if your mental well being is affected. And if none of these things help, then don't shy away from seeking professional help. A very few of you might not benefit from doing all of these self care things and might need professional help. So don't shy away from doing that. I don't know whether your college has a counselor, but you can see the counselor, see a psychologist, but get support. The faster or quicker you get support, the faster you will be able to deal with the problems that you're experiencing. And let's look at the other side of the coin then. So, this is about what you do if you are experiencing issues with your mental well being. Let's just kind of switch things around a little bit. What do you do if one of your friends is experiencing problems and they come to you for help? What are the things that you could do as a friend? There are several things that you could do as a friend. First and most important thing that you could do is give them a listening ear. You don't have to do much. You just need to listen. Again, as human beings, we are wired to not listen and tell. Our brains are configured to give advice. We don't listen. We tell people what they should be doing to feel better. That's not what they're looking for when they come to you with stress. They just want someone who can listen to them. So give them a listening ear. That helps. Be empathetic. Don't rush into making judgments. Pick out on the positives and highlight them for your friend. But most important is what I said right at the outset. Listen. Very, very helpful. Okay, listen to a friend who is having problems. So finally, I just want to encapsulate all of that into an analogy of whitewater rafting, as you will see on this slide. So life for most of us is kind of going down a river in a raft. There are going to be shallow waters, so that is the good times. There are going to be rapids where the river is flowing very fast and is dangerous and there are rocks. That's the not so good times in our lives. It's going to happen to everyone. What is important is for us to be prepared for that. So, for us to be prepared for the fact that there might be rapids down the line, what am I going to do when I hit the rapids? How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to navigate around the rocks? Have a plan for that. Have people around you within the raft who can support you and help you navigate those rocks and the rapids. Those are your kind of shoulders to lean on when needed, when there are problems. So have those kind of people on your raft. And very importantly, remember that you can always take the raft to the side of the river, get off, rest for some time. which helps you to recuperate and build up your energies to get back on the raft. But it's equally important to remember that this is life and you have to eventually get back on the raft and keep moving. So you have to keep on the raft. There are going to be good times and bad times. What's important is for all of us to learn how we can deal with the difficult times, how we can cope with the difficult times using healthy strategies so that we can bounce back on our feet as soon as possible. So I think with that, I end my talk, and I hope that's been helpful to at least some of you. And I'm happy to take questions if there are any from anyone sitting here or from anyone who has joined online, which I assume you're kind of typing in the text box.
Students, you would like to ask any questions to Doctor? I have a question.
Sure.
I was very surprised to see your presentation on loneliness among young people. And as you rightly said, loneliness is, when you think of loneliness, you usually think of the elderly. As you grow older, then you don't have anybody and things like. But young people experiencing loneliness, and it makes a lot of sense because even though young students are on social media, they have so many friends around, sometimes they find it very difficult. They don't know who they can go to. And that makes a very valid point with mental health because if you have somebody who you can speak your mind, I think that helps a lot in this. I would ask you, Doctor, how would you navigate all the social media and still have somebody, I mean, still form those relationships where you can go to somebody because everything is so superficial now. So how would young people actually be able to carve out a friendship which is
I think a lot of it is around what we really want to do and understand about this issue. So for you're right. I mean, what you said. What happens on social media is that we have lots of friends or followers or whatever it is based on the social media platform you're using, uh, who are notional friends. They are not real friends, right? And we tend to misinterpret them as real friends. We get really happy when we get likes or thumbs up or whatever it is that's happening on that social media platform. Um, but when push comes to shove, when you have difficulties, these are not people that are available for you. You need real people, as you said. And I think it's a choice that we need to make. And as I said earlier, um, there are benefits to social media. I don't want to say that there's no benefits. I mean, there are lots of benefits to social media. But at the same time, life is about balance. You can't take anything to extreme. You have to understand that you need at least one real friend whom you can trust when you are in any difficulty. And so the question to ask yourself is, if I were to have problems today, is there anyone that I can approach? And if the answer is no, then you need to take active measures to have that kind of a person in your life. So it's all about the action that you take. I mean, it's not going to happen automatically. There's no magic solution to this. To make friends in the real world, you have to take active measures. In the virtual world, it's easy. I mean, you just send an invite and you get friends. But in the real world, you have to put in an effort. And so I don't have a magical solution to it besides saying that if you want to have friends and people around you whom you can trust and who can support you, then you have to put in the effort.
Anyone else?
No, I think it's fine. I mean, if people don't have questions, it's perfectly okay. Uh, oh, there is someone. Right? Okay.
So you said we have to replace physical exercise with mental exercise. What did you mean by that?
So all of these things that I spoke about later are the mental exercises, right? So for example, um, being mindful, being aware of the situation around you, and experiencing the situations around you, and that is an exercise for the mind. How you frame your problems and respond to it is an exercise for the mind. How you prepare for difficult times and resolve them is an exercise for the mind. Problem focused responding is an exercise for the mind. So these are all exercises for the mind. Some of these happen pre a problem presenting, which is when you're preparing for a problem and how you respond to it. And some of these are happening while you're experiencing a problem. So anything that you do which is preparing to respond to a problem or actually responding a problem is an exercise for your emotional strength, so to say. So it's not um, um, like running every day. I agree that it's not like that, but it's still things that you do to prepare yourself and then respond to difficult situations and then bounce back. All of the things that I spoke about, including taking care of your sleep, are exercises for your brain.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, Doctor, I would like to ask you what would be an advice to young people in early 20s to get maximum from life?
Who have, sorry?
For young people in their early 20s to get maximum from life, what are the mistakes that we need to take care of and how to actually live life?
Right. Okay. I don't really have the answer to that. You know why? Because that will make me a spiritual guru, which I am not. I don't know how to get the maximum out of life. I mean, I think you guys know it better than I do. I mean, you are young, I'm old, so you probably need to tell me how to get the maximum out of life. What I can tell you and what I've told you is how you can deal with a situation when you are not getting the maximum out of life, or something is interfering with how you can get the maximum out of life. How you can get the maximum out of life, the only thing I can say is that if you have good mental being and good mental health, then you are in a position to get the maximum out of life. Now, what you do to get the maximum out of life, whether you want to travel the world or whether you want to, I don't know, read interesting books, or you want to just shoot the breeze with your friends, it could be anything, because it's a value judgment, right? What is maximum out of life? It varies. I mean, what your interpretation of maximum out of life might be different from my maximum out of life. So if I tell you what I think is the maximum out of life, might not really apply to you. For me, getting the maximum out of life might be sitting at home and reading good books, but you might say, I don't want to do that, I want to party all night, which is fine, which is perfectly fine. You have to decide what's the maximum out of life for you. What is it that makes you happiest is the maximum out of life. I mean, if I say anything more than that, I'm going to become a spiritual guru, which I'm not, despite the beard.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So Rocky Pereira says, Doctor, first of all, thank you for the amazing talk on young adults. Secondly, the question I would like to ask is if there is any statistics on how workaholic mindset is affecting young adults' life.
Uh, Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any statistics around the effect or risks of being a workaholic. And again, I just want to kind of expand on that a little bit, because what do you mean by a workaholic, right? That's again a value judgment. The definition of a workaholic might vary from person to person. That's the first thing. The second thing is being a workaholic does not always equate to stress. Some people enjoy being a workaholic, so it does not affect their uh, life in a stressful manner. So I think what's important to be mindful of, I mean, without giving you the statistics because I don't know the statistics and I don't think there are statistics around this, is that it's not. It's not about an objective measure of what is uh, being workaholic and what's not. What is important is a subjective estimation of the stress that work causes you. So it's your own estimate about your own workload. If the workload that you are having is causing you distress, then it's not good for your mental health. The same amount of workload might not cause distress to the person next to you. So it's important to see what is it that's affecting you rather than having a definition of what being a workaholic is. So if your question is related to yourself or anyone you know, then the answer is very simple. Look at your work style, look at whether it's causing you stress, whether it's causing you anxiety, whether it's affecting your sleep, whether it's making you irritable, whether it's making you unhappy. If it is doing one or more of all of this, then you're working too much and it's unhealthy. And so then kind of take measures to reduce that. But don't look for an objective measure to define if it's more than 5 hours of work, then it's a workaholic. That's, you're not going to get that. It's about your personal experiences of what you're doing.
Another student, Shamaya Barreto, says, "Thank you, sir, for your amazing insight on the topic of the discussion. Now, let us consider this example. Miss A is emotionally burdened with her personal problems. She is weighed down by various demands she has to meet. Miss A and Miss B are best friends. Miss B's parents have recently split, and she finds herself in an emotional turmoil. Now, Miss B wants to vent her feelings to Miss A. Considering the mental state of Miss A, do you advise her to go ahead and give a listening ear to Miss B, or should she prioritize her mental well-being first?"
Complex question. Okay. Well, the answer to that is in two parts. The first part is if now who is turmoil and who is okay, Miss A, Miss B, who is Miss A? No, no, don't read again. So for the person who is already having existing stress, if that person is able to park, as I said, to park her own problems aside and objectively listen to the other person who is in emotional turmoil because of the parents splitting up and objectively respond to it, then yes, there is no reason why you can't help the other person. And the second part of it is if Miss A's stress is going to influence the kind of responses that she's going to give to Miss B, i.e., the person's personal experiences are going to color the kind of response that she's going to give to B, then she shouldn't be doing it. And I said this is two parts, it's three parts actually. And the third part is if Miss A is not going to help Miss B when Miss B seeks help, then Miss A should be explaining to Miss B why she is not doing it, right? So it shouldn't be, no, I don't want to help you because this person has reached out to you for help. So the response possibly could be, listen, I mean, I can understand your problems. I would really love to help you, but I am going through a difficult time myself. So I don't think I'll be the best person to help you at this stage. So possibly you could speak to Miss C, whom I know and who is very good at doing this. And I'm happy to introduce you to Miss C, or you could seek help from the counselor at the college or a psychologist. So you kind of not pushing them away. you are explaining to them, or you are kind of validating their distress and saying that, listen, I understand that you need help. So you're validating the distress. You're validating the need for help. You're saying, listen, I can understand that you need help, but you're also saying that I might not be the best person, which is being honest and which is good. And you are showing them other resources that they can access to help. So that is how I would deal with this issue.
Rocky Pereira also adds that workaholic mindset, which is promoted by the influencers who focus on putting daily effort, which is sometimes too unrealistic expectations from humans to not take time off as everyone has bad days.
Okay, I smiled because I just remembered of a Facebook discussion that I had with some friends a couple of days back around this same issue. And this issue about influencers and around things getting glamorized. I think we shouldn't get caught up in this, right? Because sometimes being a workaholic is glamorized, and what you're kind of talking about is something that is kind of perpetrated or propagated by influencers. This is the negative side of social media, which I was alluding to earlier, which is what other people say starts becoming a reality. The thing is, we have to inoculate, or not inoculate, we have to, what's the word? We have to be able to build our defenses against that. We have to be able to, sorry? Build filters around that to be able to ensure that we don't get unduly influenced by things which are not helpful. And the best person to make the judgment is yourself. I mean, you don't need an influencer to tell you what's good and not good for you. You have to be able to make the judgment for yourself about what is good for you and what's not good for you. So if you think that being a workaholic is not good for your well-being, then you don't have to be a workaholic. At the end of the day, I mean, the judge of your own abilities is going to be you, I mean, not someone else. What other people say about the number of hours you work does not matter. As long as you are happy doing what you are doing, that's good enough, because influencers come and go. You have to live with yourself. So,
Okay, Dr. Kritika Pagi says, Doctor, my question is, if we are in a workplace full of toxic environment and leaving the job is very difficult, what can we as young people do and how can we handle this?
um, I will tell you what you need to do in ideal circumstances. So, can I say ideal circumstances? Because in many cases, workplaces in India are not probably geared towards these kind of responses. But what you should be doing is, I'm assuming when you say toxic workplace, you're talking about difficult co-workers, a difficult supervisor, unhealthy working conditions. So what you first need to do when you to resolve issues like this is to talk. You need to talk with the person or persons with whom there are problems and try to resolve it. Many times things fester because we don't talk about those, and they start becoming bigger and bigger, and you realize that if I just spoken about this with that person right at the outset and cleared the air, these problems would have gone away. So first try to resolve by talking with the persons with whom these problems are happening. Doesn't always help. If it helps, problem solved. If it doesn't help, then we need to escalate it upwards. And what do I mean by escalating it upwards? You need to take it to your line manager or to the supervisor and say, this is what's happening. This is not very good for my health. This is causing me stress. What can you do about it? And so you take it to the supervisor. And you keep on escalating it until it gets resolved. And sometimes in good workplaces, you're going to have internal complaints committees, right? So then if none of this works, then you take it to an internal complaints committee. Now, if none of these things work and leaving the job is an option, then one way of dealing with the situation is going away from the situation. not always a possibility. I mean, you said that going away from that toxic workplace is not a problem, not an option. Then you can do some of these things that I've suggested. But as I said, I mean, many times workplaces in India will not be geared towards this kind of situation where you can actually escalate things upwards, expecting there to be a positive response from the management or whoever it is that's kind of higher up in the hierarchy within the systems. But that's the best I can give you. And if that does not work, it does not mean that there is something wrong with you. You have to remember that. It just means that there is something wrong with the workplace. And you shouldn't be blaming yourself for the problems that are happening. It's just that the workplace is not ideal and not geared to kind of support you.
I
Great.
think that's all on YouTube.
Sorry?
Those questions were all on YouTube.
Great. Thank you very much. And can I move now? Am I allowed to move? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for that wonderful session, which was so enriching, so thought provoking, and it had a really powerful message. Thank you once again. No event can end without acknowledging the efforts of all those who contributed in making it successful. I now request the head of the Department of Psychology, Dr. Michelle Fernandez, to propose the vote of thanks.
It is said, thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. On behalf of the Department of Psychology, Carmel College, I would like to express a big thank you to you, Dr. Abhijit, for taking time out and so eloquently stressing on the need for self care among young people in order to improve mental health. Doctor, you have captivated us with your presentation, and I think we all have understood that mental health is the need of the hour, and it has never been more important than at the present moment. Thank you to the Indian Medical Association, the President Dr. Babita Angle, the Secretary Dr. Priyanka, for partnering with the Department of Psychology to conduct this webinar. I take this opportunity to place on record our thanks to the officiating principal of Carmel College, Dr. Aldina Briganza Gomes, and the vice principal, Dr. Sister Lizanne AC, for their support and guidance. Teamwork divides the task and multiplies the success. I extend thanks to the support staff, Santan and Priscilla. I think they are not around for the logistic arrangements, Wilson for the sound, and Meriston for the technical support. Many thanks to my colleagues in the department, Faye, Priyanka, Sibyl, and Mavita for helping in making the necessary arrangements. In conclusion, I would like to quote Russell Wilson, who was a football quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And he said, and I quote, if we start being honest with our pain, our anger, and our shortcomings, instead of pretending that they don't exist, then maybe we leave the world a better place than we found it. We at the Department of Psychology wish you all the very best. Be good to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Michelle. With this, we come to the end of this webinar. I would like to end by saying, give yourself the same care and attention that you give to others and watch yourself bloom. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Take care and stay safe. Thank you. Participants, please note the link is posted in the chat box. Please fill the form within an hour. Thank you.
have a group photograph now. Yeah?